here today with two illustrious guests from Liberty Bank. They are none other than the president, Sidney King.
Good morning.
Good morning. Glad to have you. And Mr. Victor Hammond.
Good morning.
We're glad to have both of you. We appreciate you joining us today as we talk about the most important subject of banking in the black community. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Liberty Bank?
Well, Liberty Bank started in 1972 in New Orleans, Louisiana. We've expanded our footprint to 8 different markets. We went from New Orleans to Baton Rouge to Jackson, Mississippi, to Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, Chicago, Detroit, Montgomery, Tuskegee, Alabama, and we've got loan production offices in Houston, Texas.
Now that's a pretty large footprint. What brought you to the Kansas City market?
Well, one of the things that Liberty Bank has done, Liberty Bank is one of the largest African-American owned banks in America. A lot of our banks were starting to lose their franchises, and we, through the National Bankers Association, saw that it was important to maintain those franchises, to keep an African-American owned financial institution in the communities that they were established in. When you go back into the 90s, there were nearly 80s and 90s, there were nearly 100 black-owned banks in America. Today, there are 21.
Wow.
What Liberty has done is we have been acquiring those franchises that are having trouble and to help maintain that African-American owned financial institution within the communities that they're established in. We have a business model that works in the urban core. We've been very successful in supporting and helping the needs of the underserved communities that we are serving in, the communities that we were created to serve.
And how old is Liberty Bank?
Liberty Bank was started in 72, so what does that make us, 44?
Gotcha. Okay. I was looking at the documentary series 7 a.m. and it talked about the number of banks that were created around 1917, number of black-owned banks that were created around that time. So to hear that our numbers have dwindled from more than 100 banks in the 80s and 90s to 21 banks.
21.
That's awfully scary.
It is.
How does that happen?
Well, it happens, there are several reasons that it happens, but I would say one of the biggest reasons is Community Reinvestment Act, CRA. It was a good act. It was something that the government instituted to help the majority businesses, force them to come in and support the urban core, the minority communities. The anti-redlining law is what it's called. But the unintended consequence was that those institutions, the larger institutions, they came in cherry picking. They came in after the doctors, after the lawyers, after the preachers, after the high network individuals. Those were the best customers of the minority banks in the past. They took the best customers away, leaving the minority banks with the clientele that had high transactions, low balances, making our business models a little bit more costly because we have a little bit more labor intense. With less balances to work with, we don't have the resources that the larger banks have. So it kind of hurt the business model of the minority bank. It was an unintended consequence. And then the other side is, there used to be a point where there was pride in the African-American community. Like James Brown said, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud.
Absolutely.
There used to be that pride in the African-American community. Well, now the community, in my opinion, has gotten to what's in it for me. It's becoming more selfish for what's in it for me, as opposed to what can I do to make my community a better community? What can I do to help the community as a whole? That's why a lot of these movements, the Buy Black movement, we are trying to encourage people to support the urban core, but getting them to do that has been difficult.
It's interesting as you point out the Community Reinvestment Act with the Black Economic Union being a community development corporation. We're very interested in bringing new projects to the market, particularly projects that bring jobs, employment, but also business ownership and housing. And one of the things that I found interesting for the 2015-2016 calendar year is that the new market tax credits that are issued to spur development, none of our black financial institutions receive any new market tax credits that would aid organizations like BEU and other entities that would want to develop in black and urban neighborhoods, particularly on the east side of Kansas City.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the new market tax credit program, it was established, as you mentioned, to spur economic development in the underserved communities within our country. Liberty was one of the first institutions to receive new market tax credits. and for years, we were receiving new market tax credits. We have funded, I'd say over $160 million in new market tax credit deals. So we have the infrastructure in place, we've got the resources, we've got the team, on how to manage and handle new market tax credits. But the majority institutions saw there was money there. There was money being made. And they came out and went after that money. They created programs, nonprofits, through foundations and different things that they now go and get those new market tax credit allocations. No black-owned banks are getting new market tax credit allocations anymore. One of the things, that is, curious to me is that every institution that received the new market tax credit received a high excellent rating on every category of the ratings that they determine who wins the new market tax credit deals. Liberty received high excellent on every category except for management. We received a low excellent score on management. Now, we had funded over $160 million in new market tax credits. We had the infrastructure in place. We understood how new market tax credit works, how to put a deal together, and our focus was putting those deals in the urban core. But a company that has never received a new market tax credit program, has never worked a new market tax credit deal, they get rated high excellent in management. There's a bias there, again, it's control. We don't control a lot. We don't control a lot of the assets. We don't have the influence that a lot of the larger corporations have, a lot of the larger banks have that are getting those new market tax credits, a lot of the nonprofits that are getting those new market tax credit allocations. And then when they go into a certain community to do a project, you look at the wide market of the community that they're working in, but they pick a portion over here that's in that zone, in that area. It's an influential area, part of that zone. That's where they're putting those allocations. They're not coming into the urban core, not, as you say, into the hood,
right,
to put those funds where they were intended to go. And it's about money.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. I was talking with a colleague of mine who was telling me, and I ended up doing a little more in-depth research about the Burns and McDonald's headquarters, which happens to be, that little sliver happens to be in a zone UR for urban redevelopment. Well, it also qualified for new market tax credits. And that was, as I understand, part of the interest in redeveloping the headquarters there in that area. And so it speaks to the point of, are these programs that were created to help and spur development in black and urban neighborhoods or in the hood, are they really being maximized by others? And I guess the unintended consequences that we're left with properties that continue to be dilapidated, the value continues to erode, and the pride essentially doesn't exist.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, through the National Bankers Association, our primary trade association for minority banks, the voice for minority banking in America,
Okay.
We have been working with the Treasury Department trying to restructure the new market tax credit process. Maybe carve out a portion for smaller institutions and then, the larger institutions, because 90% of the allocations are going to the same institutions over and over and over again. We're saying put a restriction on it where they can win the allocation 2 years in a row and then they have to sit a year out to give more entities the opportunity to receive allocations. And then when they come back in, they have to bring another institution in with them to kind of share that and kind of help grow that within the urban core, as opposed to the same people getting it over and over and over and over again. So we're working on trying to come up with ways to make it work for everybody. But, again, working with Treasury, those big institutions have the lobbyists, they got the big bucks,
Right.
And, they're still making the decisions.
Well, I'm hoping that, even though they have the big lobbyists that are paid enormous amounts of money, that as we have this show and other shows, that the people will be informed and that the people will stand beside Liberty Bank and black banks in general to help make the argument and to force our legislators and politicians who work for us, quite frankly, force them to really represent us in a better manner. As we talked about the size of different banks, I was doing some research on banks, and I looked at a couple of banks, other minority banks, and I looked at the largest Korean American bank has over $10.6 billion in assets. $10.6 $10.6 billion. One of the largest, or the largest Hispanic bank, or one of the largest Hispanic banks, has $10.1 billion in assets. And so then when we start looking at, well, before I go there, when we look at Sunflower Bank in Salina, Kansas, a woman-owned bank, $1.7 billion in assets. But then when I look at One United Bank, the largest black bank, only $625 million roughly in assets.
They've increased this year. They're about $640 million now.
Okay, $640 million. But that is such a stark difference when you start talking about the amount of capital that's available. And so I think a lot of times we look at, let's say Liberty Bank, we'll use you as the example. We'll look at Liberty Bank and says, well, Liberty doesn't lend, or Liberty can't lend, but when we look at the assets under management, it seems like that maybe we're not investing in black banks. We're not putting our deposits there. We need more of us to do that.
Right. When you look at the largest, Hispanic, Asian, and Korean American banks, they're in the billions of dollars.
Yes.
And again, $650 million, $640 million is not a lot. When you look at all 21 black-owned banks left in America, our assets total about $5 billion. We don't have the resources that the larger institutions have to do the things that we like to do. Another challenge that we have is we are highly regulated. Examiners come in and they look at our situations, and because we're smaller, they can look at more of the deals, whereas the bigger banks can get away with the, pick a pool here, and many of their deals don't even get reviewed because they may not have the same credit quality, it may not be the strongest deals, but when we look at a deal, they look at pretty much everything that we do. And if there's an I undotted, a T uncrossed, they're ready to criticize that, they're ready to write that loan up. I mean, we have just, it's not a level or an equal playing field, because when these examiners come in, they come in, one, with expectations that we're not quite as good as our peer banks. So they want to come in, criticize, and they want to make a name for themselves. And we just get a heavy dose of criticism in the loans that we do. So we've got to be very extremely careful in making those loans. We've got to get the I's dotted. We've got to get the T's crossed. We've got to get current financial statements. We've got to have that information in the file. We've got to have our memos to show that we're having conversations with those customers. And a lot of times in our community is when we make a loan to an entity, they are paying their payments on time, and that is great. But when we ask them for updated financial statements, they'll tell us, well, you don't need to see my financial statements. I'm paying you on time. That's all you need. But we've got challenges on the other side that we've got to overcome, and we've got to face so that we can continue doing that. Gotcha. We don't want that well-paying loan to be classified, as special mentioned or, substandard or anything, because it affects everything that we do. So we are prudent lenders. We are conservative lenders. But the biggest thing that we do when we look at lending is we look at your ability to pay. You've got to bring us current financial statements. You've got to bring us information to show that you have the ability to pay us back. And a lot of times people, they have a book for the taxes and a book for the bank. We're smart enough that we can see that.
Yes.
So people come in with those imbalanced books, and they're criticizing us in the community, saying we're not making them loans. They don't bring us information that qualifies.
Right.
If you bring us information that qualifies, we're making those loans.
Gotcha.
We are looking for loans everywhere we can. We have plenty of money to lend. We're looking for good quality lending opportunities. But if you come in and you're kind of half-stepping, it makes it difficult for us.
Absolutely.
Because of the regulatory scrutiny that we get. We've got to make sure that everything is on level. If we bring in a tax return over here and a financial statement that looks a lot better over here, and then the examiner gets a hold of it, and they say, well, how did you make this decision? Well, we looked at these statements. Well, did you look over here? There's some concern with that loan. There's something wrong.
Absolutely.
And the other side is, we'll look at the financial statement, and they'll pull the tax return and see the difference. So we've got to be very prudent in making those business decisions.
It's interesting as you talk about paperwork. So as I'm looking at deals for development, and I'm working performance, so everybody wants their deal to go through. Everybody wants you to jump on this project. And what I talk a lot about is being able to handle the debt service. And
That's
so
it.
if the project doesn't cash flow, it just doesn't cash flow, and we can't move forward.
Right.
And I sometimes I think it's that financial education that a lot of times we don't have. To know that those components are absolutely necessary.
They're vital.
You know, and probably even more so once they make it in your. I believe more so once they make it into your hands, because you guys are held to such a higher level. You know, as we look at the market here in Kansas City, we've talked about the market share or the black market share that Liberty Bank has, and that number is less.
The lack thereof.
Yeah, or the lack thereof is less than 1%. The Black Economic Union is interested, or it's not just interested, but we want to work with Liberty Bank to help increase that number. We think it's very important. One of the things that Dr. King talked about in 1968 was a bank-in, was black people having the right to control their financial destiny. In addition to that, Dr. Claude Anderson, he talks about power economics or group economics, and making sure that we're pooling our resources and building that economic floor so that we can do all the other things that are needed in our community. What is it that we can do, or what is it that people can do in general to begin to invest and support our bank and make you more powerful to, in turn, help us?
Yeah, if I may jump in here, I think one thing we have to do is change our thinking, our way of thinking. Somehow we have a systemic way in our community to believe that doing business with black-owned businesses or black-owned banks is settling for less. And I don't understand that mindset. What do you mean settling for less? Less than what? You follow what I'm getting at here? So somehow we have to get that pride back in our communities to understand the importance of supporting black-owned businesses. Now everyone can Google and figure out before desegregation took place, how many black-owned businesses there were. I mean, I'm sure you heard of Black Wall Street and other communities across the country that were thriving because African Americans supported one another in those days. For example, in today's economy, you ask any kid would they rather wear FUBU or Jordan, which one do you think they're going to pick, right? That's because somehow they view one as being inferior to the other.
Absolutely.
Right? So somehow we have to change our thinking. We have to work on what we believe our values are and change the way we perceive doing business with a black-owned institution is. So we encourage people to come out and experience the way we serve people. You're going to get excellent customer service. You're going to be treated as family. We know your names. You know, our tellers, when you walk in, they will greet you by name. I don't know how they do it. They see hundreds of people a week.
They know their customers.
But they know their customers. It's the most amazing thing, and that's something that I guess we have as an expectation of all of our employees. We want to know who we do business with. Therefore, you're building that relationship. We use this example all the time when we're dealing with business owners. It's a dating process, not a marriage proposal. So when you come in and you propose for marriage immediately, well, we haven't gotten to know you yet. So we're not just going to marry you. You know, we want to go through the little courtship, the little dating piece, so to speak, to make sure that we understand the ins and outs of your business. We understand the cyclical nature of your income so that we're comfortable. We both seen business plans, tons of them, and in a business plan, all of them succeed. Well, the reality of it is not every business plan succeeds. So we have experience in understanding some of the pitfalls that perhaps in that business plan or performer you didn't consider. So those are some of the things that, from my point of view, that we can, if we can change our thinking in our community to understand the importance of supporting not just a black-owned bank, but black-owned businesses in our community, I think we'll all benefit. And that's what I love about the movement that's taking place, where people are starting to consciously understand the importance of supporting minority and black-owned businesses. King Uncle Martin, obviously, because of the relationship with King, but I don't believe that's his uncle.
If I were him, I would be taking credit there.
I just had to clarify.
I would make the association. Well, you know, it's been a pleasure to have you gentlemen here, and we definitely want to support Liberty Bank. Liberty Bank has been a great friend of and partner with the Black Economic Union. With my tenure, we will increase that here real soon. We want to make sure that we practice what we preach, and we're glad that you you are here in Kansas City, and that we're fortunate enough to have a black bank. Every city does not have one.
No,
And so we're very fortunate that we can have a bank that understands our community, that's deeply entrenched here. I remember a few years back now when you moved to Kansas City. Victor, you've been in the area, man, just about all your life, I guess. Yeah, just about all your life now. And I've known you quite some time. And you've always been a help at the various institutions that you've been at. But I'm very glad to see you at Liberty Bank, because I know with the two of you together that this region will continue to grow, and that businesses and institutions like BEU will continue to prosper with your help. So we definitely appreciate you being here on One Voice as a guest of the Black Economic Union. And so we hope that you will tune in.
Can I just throw a shameless plug in?
Sure.
Okay. Well, did you know that everybody who's anybody banks at Liberty? You see, you have a choice when it comes to banking. You're at liberty to bank wherever you choose. So in that respect, everyone banks at Liberty. We just want you to choose Liberty Bank and Trust at your liberty, of course.
I'm IFBB Bikini Pro Cat Williams, and when I'm not working out in the gym, I'm searching the web on Cascade Media and What's Up Kansas City. So make sure you check them out.